Oh, and we're off. So it's time to get stronger. But first, you need to understand the mechanism before you learn the application. We're going to cover the basic physiology and teach you, hopefully, what's actually going on and how you can take advantage of that understanding to increase your strength faster and more efficiently. Let's start off with a basic exercise like a bicep curl. So what is actually going on when we do a bicep curl? So I'm holding a dumbbell and I curl up towards here. So what's happening is there's a muscle that starts here and ends here, and it's contracting and pulling this bone up, causing my arm to lift. But what's telling that muscle to move is my brain and my nervous system. So once my nervous system tells that muscle to contract, my arm moves. It's pretty straightforward. To increase the force that that arm contracts with, there's a lot of different adaptations that are happening here, and we need to understand those to properly achieve the desired outcome, such as increased force, increased speed, increased efficiency. We have three basic components. So it's the nervous system. So the message coming from my head to my arm is one part of the equation. Another part of the equation is the muscle itself. How does the muscle adapt? How does it get stronger? And then the third component is the connective tissue. So your muscle is surrounded by connective tissue called fascia, which we're going to go into a bit more detail on later on. But it also develops into your tendons, and your tendon strength is really important for your overall force production. Jumping into number one, we see increase in motor unit recruitment. So what that means is you have to have a look at this image here where I'm talking about what a motor unit is essentially. And it is the nerve and the sarcomeres, or the muscle fibers that it innervates. And why that's important is you can actually increase the amount of motor units you recruit the more you train a specific skill. So if I'm doing a bicep curl, stick to the example, the more I practice that skill, my brain and nervous system is going to recruit more motor units, which means more of my muscle fibers are going to be working for that one movement. Then we work on to number two, where I've written the size principle. So the size principle just means that the motor units that are the biggest and fastest and strongest are going to be recruited first. The more I train, the better my body is going to get at recruiting these bigger, faster, stronger muscles to perform the movement. That's going to increase the strength of that movement, the force production of that movement, without requiring more muscle mass. So this is for somebody who's a boxer or a weightlifter or some kind of weight restricted sport where you need to be strong and powerful, but you can't be bigger and heavier. Rate of motor unit recruitment is number three. So that just means the speed at which you can recruit those motor units. So the more efficient you become at that movement, the faster you can recruit those motor units. And finally, we've got number four, where it's motor unit synchronization. And that's essentially the sequence of recruitment. So if I'm doing a bicep curl, my brain is going to recruit the fastest muscles really quickly and in the correct order to make that movement as fast, as powerful, and as efficient as possible. So these are all very important benefits of strength training, and they occur quite quickly in a training program within the nervous system. What's going on at the muscle level? If I don't want to get any bigger or stronger, it's still going to happen slightly, but not to a huge extent. We'll go over the training implications later on. But for now, I want you to take a look at these 1, 2, and 3. So on the cellular level, you can see here on the right, we've got the muscle fiber. So this is it zoomed in nice and closely. You can see myosin and actin. So they will become more and more efficient with the sliding filament theory. It basically just means you're going to be able to contract a little bit faster because obviously the nerve impulses are going to be coming a little bit faster. And calcium sensitivity. So calcium is really important for muscle contraction, and that's why it's important in your diet, as well as magnesium. But your muscles will actually become more sensitive to the calcium and therefore make the muscle contraction stronger and faster. Then we look at fiber type transformation. That's essentially where you go from having slower twitch muscles to faster twitch muscles, and I will maybe come out with another video about that in detail later on because it is complicated and kind of misunderstood. Then finally, we've got pennation angle. So pennation sounds like an unusual word, and it's so unusual that the little squiggly line came up underneath when I wrote it into PowerPoint. But basically all it is the angle that the muscle comes into the bone at. And that can change depending on your training. Sometimes the muscles get shorter and sometimes they get bigger, and you'll either favor force or range of motion. Now, I'm not saying you can't be strong and have great range of motion, but I'm saying that they can be slightly different in terms of pennation. Ooh. On this slide, we have connective tissue. So connective tissue is your fascia, like we alluded to earlier. Your fascia is a connective tissue, kind of a light skin that encapsulates, I suppose is the word, around the muscles. So you've got little groupings of muscles, and then there's a big group of them all together, and each group individually is surrounded by fascia, and then the whole muscle is surrounded by fascia. It kind of glues everything together with a nice layer around it, and then that layer hardens up as it gets closer to the bone and becomes a tendon. And what can often happen is if people do too heavy of weight too quickly, is the tendon and the fascia will get damaged. But if you progressively overload that area, your tendons will get stiffer and stronger, and the same thing with the fascia, and that's going to lead to increased force production and increased speed of contraction. Finally, we've got mechanical advantage. So that's just where your biomechanics changes. So that's anything like a technical change or your proportions. You could change the proportion of your hamstring versus your quads, and that can change the mechanical advantage in a squat or a deadlift. It's all dependent on your body proportions, and to be honest, there's not a huge amount that you can do with this. Right, well, now I hope you understand a little bit more about what's going on the physiology level, but let's take a look at what does this actually mean. So what do I do now if I want to get stronger? The basic principles haven't really changed since the 60s. The complex movements is number one. So you want to have complex multi-joint movements. Get really good at squat, deadlift, overhead press, row, pull-up, dips, these kind of movements, multi-joint exercises. You want to keep the sets quite high. So when you start off in the beginning, you could do 5x5, and 5 sets is more than enough, or even 3 sets. But as you progress, you're going to want to have way more sets. I've seen friends of mine who do weightlifting and they'll do 15, 20 sets of 2 reps. So that's the kind of level that you're going to be looking at. With the reps, you want to keep the reps low. So here I've written the SAID. SAID principle is specific adaptation to impose demands. If I'm trying to specifically adapt to lifting a heavy weight, that means I have to lift heavy weights. So I can't lift really, really heavy weights loads of times. That means I have to keep the reps low, and that's where this comes in. Low reps, high sets. That's where you get the volume in. When you're lifting the weight, you should consider intent. So intent is, I want to move this weight fast. It's when I'm doing a pull-up and I say, okay, I'm going to pull up as hard as I can until my chest touches the bar, and that's intent. I'm not just slowly and controlled going up. I'm going up, boom, as fast as possible. But you do have a force velocity curve that pretty much determines how fast you can go, but it's the intent that I'm going to move fast that's important. And finally, or second last, we've got long rest. So in order to lift heavy weights fast, you're going to need long rest periods so you're not fatigued. It's completely misunderstood. People need to really increase their rest periods. You just stop rushing your workouts. And especially if you want to get fast, if you want to get strong or fast, you need to have longer rest periods and completely recover from any fatigue that you're feeling to get optimal performance. Finally, we've got the weight. Here I've written 80 to 100% of max. That means you're pushing hard. You're trying to lift heavy weights. We're not trying to build big muscles here. We're trying to get strong. And to get strong, you need to overcome heavy load. And that's what I mean by that. So you need to estimate what your 1 rep max is and then work at between 80 and 100% of that, always. So what are some practical aspects that I can take away from this? Number one, you can use a push-pull and heavy carry workout. So that's the new kind of split that a lot of people are doing, where you do a push day, a pull day, a rest day, and then you can mix in with that some core and some grip strength. And if you're doing the correct loading and programming like I've described earlier, that should be enough. Focus on your eccentrics and your isometrics. So eccentric is the lowering portion of a bicep curl like this, and an isometric is holding something. So this is going to actually really help your tendons and your connective tissue. This is going to build up the strength. It's going to build up that mechanical tension that we need, and it's really good for your joints. Your joints feel very good after doing a lot of isometric training. If you want more information on that, I have uploaded an isometric video, and I go over a lot of the principles of training for isometrics. Weightlifting movements. So weightlifting movements are speed strength. So they're nice and quick and they're heavy loads. That's going to help you get strong because it is a compound movement. They're complex, there's technique involved, and all of the things I alluded to earlier are going to be very important in a weightlifting movement like a snatch or a clean and jerk. Then we've got dynamic variable resistance. So this might sound like a foreign language to you, but if you're a fan of Louis Simmons or any of those accommodating resistance advocates in powerlifting, you'll be familiar with this. It's essentially using bands and using chains to change the resistance and the load throughout an exercise. More on that later. I'll probably do a whole type of video on that because it's a very interesting topic and it works very, very well. And finally, we've got cluster sets. So a cluster set is essentially where I take mini breaks between each repetition. So I'll do 1 rep, rest for 10 seconds, then do another rep, rest for 10 seconds, and this all combats fatigue. You're going to have a long rest period between your sets, but within your sets you're also going to have these rest periods, and what that allows you to do is push harder for the times that you're working. So you're going to get more maximal working sets. It takes an obnoxiously long amount of time, but it really works. Anyway, that's all from me, guys. I hope this information is helpful to you, and I hope you're able to apply some of this new knowledge to your own training and your own program. If you are new to my channel, I would love if you could watch some of my other videos and give me some feedback down in the comments of what you think of them and if you've learned anything. If you liked this video and you found it useful, feel free to like and share, and if you have any questions, you can always comment them down below. If you watched the whole video, thank you very much, and if you share it with friends, even better. Check me out on social media. So I do a lot on Instagram. I upload stories pretty much every day and little useful tips that might come in handy for you. I've got some other videos, as I mentioned earlier. So I've got isometric training, how to L-sit, and I'm big on the calisthenics and bodyweight stuff. So check those videos out for some more information. Anyway, thanks a million for watching the whole thing and have a good day.